Lars von Trier's The House That Jack Built is more than a serial killer film. It's an intricate, self-reflective work that forces the audience to engage with evil through its beauty, its structure, and its philosophical provocations. By examining the film's aesthetic choices and its deep philosophical underpinnings, we can better understand how von Trier manipulates us into complicity, challenges our moral frameworks, and deconstructs the mythology of serial killers. Von Trier has never been a filmmaker interested in moral comfort. He doesn't present violence as something to be easily condemned or dismissed. Instead, he lures us in, seduces us with striking visuals and classical compositions, then confronts us with the ugliness beneath. The House That Jack Built weaponizes beauty. Its cinematography is precise, composed like a series of paintings, cold, calculated, yet undeniably mesmerizing. Scenes of carnage unfold in meticulously framed shots, with deep blacks and crimson reds playing against pale skin and stark white light. Shadows stretch like something out of Caravaggio, while Jack's house, the one he endlessly reconstructs, is presented with the same obsessive attention to detail that he applies to his murders. And then there's the music. Glenn Gould's rendition of Bach's Goldberg variations repeats like an artist lost in his own thoughts, each note an echo of Jack's obsessive nature. David Bowie's fame plays over a montage of his crimes, transforming horror into something almost celebratory. The soundtrack doesn't just accompany the violence, it elevates it, makes it operatic, makes it feel, in Jack's mind, like creation. We aren't just watching a man kill, we're watching someone who sees himself as an artist, assembling his masterpiece. And this is where the film implicates us, the audience. Beauty is persuasive, it has the power to override morality, to make us momentarily forget what we're looking at. We've seen this before. Kubrick did it in A Clockwork Orange. Scorsese did it in Goodfellas. But von Trier takes it further. He doesn't just beautify the violence, he forces us to question why we are drawn to it. By making Jack's world so visually compelling, he turns the audience into reluctant voyeurs, complicit in the act of looking. This manipulation extends beyond the visuals. The film's tone shifts erratically, veering from bleak horror to absurd comedy in an instant. One moment, Jack is staging his victims in grotesque tableaus. The next, he's dragging a corpse behind his van in a sequence that plays like slapstick. The laughter catches in our throats. Von Trier makes us complicit not just in observing, but in reacting. The effect is unsettling, forcing us to acknowledge the way horror and humor exist side by side, not just in film, but in human nature itself. And that's the trap von Trier sets. By the time we realize how much we've been drawn in, how much we've accepted Jack's perspective, it's too late. The question is no longer whether Jack is a monster, it's whether we ever really wanted to look away in the first place. Von Trier's structure doesn't just document Jack's transformation, it dissects and critiques the way serial killers are mythologized in media. True crime, cinema, literature, they often present serial killers as brilliant masterminds, as meticulous architects of death. But von Trier exposes the truth behind that myth. Jack isn't a genius. He is impulsive, sloppy, constantly on the verge of being caught. His art is meaningless, his philosophy self-serving nonsense. By breaking down Jack's development into 5 incidents, von Trier dismantles the romanticism that often surrounds serial killers. He forces us to see the truth behind the myth. That beneath the grandiose self-perception and obsessive artistry, there is nothing but a pathetic man desperately trying to convince himself that his evil has meaning. Jack doesn't just kill, he intellectualizes his murders. Throughout The House That Jack Built, he constantly reframes his violence as something beyond mere crime. He speaks at length of art, philosophy, and moral relativism, constructing an elaborate justification for his atrocities. In his own mind, he isn't a monster, he's an artist, a thinker, someone who operates beyond conventional morality.
Turned out the little old lady who was merely an accident added a great touch of humor to my staged photographs.
But von Trier doesn't just present these ideas, he interrogates them, using Jack's own words to expose the hollowness of his own philosophy. Jack believes himself to be superior, above the constraints of conventional morality, an embodiment of Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the figure who rises above herd morality to impose his own values. Nietzsche rejected absolute good and evil, viewing morality as a social construct designed to control the weak. Jack takes this philosophy and twists it into something self-serving. If morality is an illusion, then his actions are not wrong. If he is the Übermensch, then his violence is not just justified, it is his right. This belief manifests often in the way Jack views his victims. He doesn't see them as people, but as instruments in his symphony of destruction. They are raw material, existing only to serve in the creation of his vision. His detached, clinical descriptions of their suffering reveal a man who has fully embraced moral nihilism. He doesn't believe in guilt or conscience. He believes in power, and the idea that true greatness comes from imposing one's will without remorse. But Jack's philosophy is flawed from the start. The Übermensch is not simply someone who disregards morality. It is someone who creates new values, who transcends human limitations. Jack doesn't transcend anything. He is not a visionary. He is bound by compulsion, by the same patterns of obsession and failure that define all serial killers. Despite his claims to the contrary, he is not breaking free. He is trapped, doomed to repeat himself. His delusion is that he is in control when, in reality, he is enslaved by his very own pathology. Von Trier also invokes William Blake throughout the film, most notably The Tiger, Blake's poem about creation, destruction, and the unknowable force that forges both. Jack sees himself in this vision, the predator, the necessary counterbalance to the lamb. He believes that destruction is not just a natural force, but a divine one. He's not simply killing, he is shaping the world, forging something new from the ashes. Blake's poetry often contrasts innocence and experience, exploring the corruption of purity through suffering. Jack, in his grandiosity, misinterprets this contrast. He sees himself as enlightened, moving beyond innocence into the higher realm of experience. But what he fails to understand is that Blake's vision is not an endorsement of destruction, it's a lament. The Tiger doesn't celebrate the predator and questions the nature of a universe in which such a creature exists. This misreading is key to Jack's character. He believes he is an artist and that his actions have meaning, that his violence is part of some larger cosmic order. But in reality, he is no more divine than his victims. His destruction creates nothing. He believes he is the Tiger, but in the end, he is just another lost soul, spiraling towards oblivion. But we should also point out here that Jack does not just see himself as a philosopher, he sees himself as an artist as well. His murders, his compositions, even his monologues are all part of what he imagines to be his magnum opus. He repeatedly compares himself to great artists and architects, referencing everything from Gothic cathedrals to classical sculpture. He believes that violence, like art, is an essential force of nature, that true beauty is born from destruction. This is most evident in his final act, the construction of his masterpiece in the freezer. Here, his delusions reach a peak. He arranges the bodies with meticulous care, believing that he has finally achieved perfection. But this moment of triumph is immediately followed by his downfall. He has spent the entire film convinced his killings were leading towards something greater, that they would elevate him beyond the reach of ordinary men. Instead, they lead him to damnation. Jack's entire philosophy is an illusion, and Von Trier ensures that it crumbles. His final descent into hell is not a moment of tragic grandeur, it is a confirmation of his failure. The bridge he hopes to cross has already collapsed. The passage he believes will lead him to something higher instead leads him further into the abyss. He has spent his life convincing himself that his violence had meaning, that it made him more than human. But in the end, he is just another lost soul. Another man who mistook his brutality for brilliance. But the house that Jack built is not only the story of a killer's delusions, it is the story of an artist wrestling with his own provocations. Jack believes himself to be a great creator, a visionary, an architect of suffering. And in that, he is not just a killer, he is a surrogate for Von Trier himself. Over his career, Von Trier has repeatedly courted controversy, crafting films that disturb, provoke, and often push the limits of what audiences will tolerate. Jack, in many ways, mirrors Von Trier's own critics' perception of him, a man who plays with suffering, who beautifies violence, who seems to revel in destruction. And just as Jack constructs elaborate justifications for his killings, Von Trier has been accused of doing the same thing with his films. But the key difference is in how the narrative resolves. Von Trier does not let Jack win. He allows him to build his case, to argue for his own brilliance, but then he systematically dismantles it. Jack believes he is in control, not just of his victims, but of the narrative itself. He speaks directly to us, guiding us through his philosophy, shaping his own legend as if he were the sole architect of his story. And for much of the film, Von Trier allows him to do so. We see the world through Jack's eyes, hear his justifications, experience his violence in the brutal way he wants us to. But then, slowly, methodically, Von Trier pulls the rug out from under us. The cracks in Jack's perception begin subtly. His attempts at mastery are riddled with failures, blood trails he can't clean, evidence he overlooks, bodies he struggles to move. His intellectual posturing is undermined by his childish arrogance, his overestimation of his own cleverness. As much as he insists that he is an artist and that he is exceptional, the reality is he's just another killer, defined not by brilliance but by the same compulsions and shortcomings as those before him. By the time he constructs his so-called masterpiece, the illusion has fully collapsed. His moment of triumph is immediately followed by his downfall, revealing that all of his theorizing, his justifications, his supposed artistry were just leading him nowhere but to hell. This final descent is Von Trier's ultimate rejection of Jack's worldview, and perhaps a response to his own critics. The film has, until this point, allowed Jack to speak, to defend himself, to construct meaning where there is none. But hell does not care for philosophy. The bridge to transcendence lies in ruin before him. The passage that seems to offer escape instead reveals an endless void. Jack has spent his life insisting that his actions had significance, that he was creating something greater than himself. But Von Trier shows us what was there all along. Nothing. Jack does not ascend. He does not escape. He simply falls. But the house that Jack built is not just about one man's descent. It is about the audience's complicity in watching it unfold. Von Trier makes us engage with Jack's perspective, seducing us with beauty, challenging our moral boundaries, and daring us to keep looking. And then, just as he does with Jack, he turns the mirror back on us. Why do we watch? Why are we drawn to evil? Are we any different from Jack in our obsession with violence, with suffering, with destruction? In the end, The House That Jack Built is more than a film about a serial killer. It is a film about art itself, about its power to disturb, to provoke, to manipulate. Jack sees destruction as creation, but Von Trier refutes this. His film is not a glorification of violence, nor is it a simple condemnation. It is a confrontation of its audience, of the mythology we build around killers, of the role in art in depicting evil. It does not offer comfort. It does not offer easy answers. It only offers the abyss, and perhaps a question. Is Von Trier the artist or the killer? Or in the eyes of his critics, has he always been both? Ready to perform another cinematic post-mortem on a character descending into the abyss? Then why not check out my video on Kill List? I hope to see you over there.